Hello, everybody that came in and decided to watch Daniel and I today. We're setting up a different way to do live streams because Daniel and I want to provide our communities here with more information that you can't see just in a normal video setting. Be able to actually sit down with guests and sit down with each other and discuss the things that are going on in our world. And as a matter of speaking, right as we were getting everything set up here, we started talking about how movies and television can provoke certain thoughts and start getting you prepared mentally for how you would handle a situation. So Daniel, what was it that we were talking about right before we started?
We were talking about how movies can help you get ideas for for homesteading and prepping and that kind of thing. So
yeah, so we were talking a little bit about what we like to do at nighttime, and occasionally we'll sit down with the family and watch a show. And while there's good shows and there's bad shows out there as far as their amount of wholesomeness, there are some that, even if they're not wholesome, still provide a deep look into the world and how things might unfold during a disaster. And one of those shows is The Walking Dead. The Walking Dead sort of shows you the worst of humanity and what can happen and the things that you would do. As humans, we can't help but look at a scenario and decide how we would react to it. That's sort of how we learn from these different events that go on around the world. And that's why we all watch the news, because we look at things that are going on and saying, how could I protect myself from a hurricane? How could I protect my family from an earthquake? How would I react to that? So it's important that we still use these tools to try and work through these different events. And I think that they're great ways. My whole method, my whole path to preparedness started with two movies that I can remember distinctly. And it had to have been 15, 20 years ago. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I saw that, and this is before I had ever even considered carrying a firearm, before I had even, I was still a teen or just coming out of teens. And I watched that and I said, oh my God, I would not be prepared to handle that. And so it immediately turned something on in my mind that made me start thinking, how are you going to prepare for this type of thing? And the second one was 28 Days Later, which is another plague, kind of violence-driven movie, which made me think I'm not prepared for that either. And so I started sort of working through these preparations in my head of what I would do. And while the phase of fictional movie watching waned, I turned towards real events that were going on in the world. And you had civil wars, you have government collapse, you have economic collapse, you have all of these things which kind of turned the smoke and tinder of a fictional setting into reality that we see before us today. So absolutely, I think that these sort of movies can sort of awaken different thoughts of how to prepare for yourself and for your family. I think they can be used as a good teaching tool that way. Do you agree, Daniel?
Oh yeah, yeah, I agree. Yeah, especially like we I know it's not good in the gory parts. We kind of don't
shy
mess
away
with.
from.
Yeah, but The Walking Dead, the way they're constantly searching for food, that's the way it's going to be. If something happens, it's going to be like that. And your biggest enemy is going to be your fellow humans.
That's right.
Not the zombies or anything. It's going to be the gangs and the people that want to take what you have or what you produce. But that show, when they do grow a garden, they don't grow near enough. And
Bro Audio in the chat room brought up a great point. And he said that, too much fear, more positivity. And I think that is a great thing to understand, that we never discuss fear, we discuss reality and what can happen. And the positive side to everything is we have time in our relative time of peace in the United States and in much of the world to prepare, because only the people who are left unprepared will be afraid during a collapse, at least afraid of inability. So I know a big mission statement of ours and a big mission statement of yours, Daniel, and your families, is that you can take control of your environment now and start producing your own food, start raising your own livestock, and start preparing for times when things might not be so peaceful.
Yeah, getting a supply, a barter supply, so that you have something to barter when, because if I always go by scripture, and that might be a downfall of mine, but I always look that silver and gold is going to be, they're going to be throwing it in the street. I mean, when you have a gold bar and somebody's got enough food to get his family fed for a couple of days, and you say, I'll give you this gold bar for that food, you're going to be keeping that gold bar, because
Right.
the family's not going to want it. So
That's right.
eventually you get tired of holding it and throwing it down, so carrying it around. But yeah, go ahead.
There's some real interesting things there. I was talking with Steve Quayle, and we were discussing the importance of these primary metals during a collapse. And he brought up one time in particular where a person used a gold bar. So this was, the equivalent of, and it was just an ounce or a couple of ounces. So you're looking at $6,000 to $10,000 worth of gold in real value. Use that $6,000 to $10,000 worth of gold to buy an escape for him and his family out of an area that was, undergoing a societal collapse. And I believe this was in one of the Asian countries. And so, like you said, that gold becomes valueless to an extent other than what it can do for you at that very moment in time. So if you can use it to, get your child one dose of medicine, you're going to use it to do that. Or if you can use it to, buy food, you're going to use it to do that. And it's only after the recovery phase would you even consider its value.
Oh, I agree 100% with you there. That's it's good to have it, in case something happens. I mean, we have silver. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, we have silver, but if it worst case scenario, we can make a Claudio silver machine and use it for that. So if it's worth nothing, it's worth medicine to us. So and that's the reason we have it, is for medicine. But yeah, there's so many shows that are coming out now, about preparedness and getting ready. I think the movement is moving towards that, and I think they're trying to tell people, look, you need to do something. Think about something. Even FEMA says, to do something.
Well, I think if we look around the world, you've got Venezuela, who is undergoing an economic collapse, where the government has told their people explicitly to use every inch of space that you have to grow your own food. And that's just one example, but an important one for us, because we live in a country, and all Western countries, where the life of the greenness of your grass is more important on a social level than your ability to produce your own food, which is real out of whack with reality, because every front yard could be turned into a garden. So I think that's just one aspect, but you've got another one where you've got Russia telling their citizens to prepare for really a worst case scenario, prepare for a nuclear or biological war. And then you've got different things going on in the world. And that's why it's so important, because we live in the United States and we live in a time of peace right now, that we can, like you said, get a little bit of extra silver, or make a rocket mass heater, or learn how to start a wetwood fire. These sort of skills will really protect you and buffer you from a disaster.
You're right. I mean, that's especially starting a fire. You wouldn't believe the people that don't know how to start a fire. And I actually had made a starting a fire video, and I had to edit it. And
it is not. Yeah, it's definitely not as easy as you would think it would be. Now, given the right conditions, it's pretty easy. If you've got dry wood, dry tinder, dry everything, it happens every year. People throw a cigarette butt down and it starts a fire. But when the conditions aren't perfect, and when dew has already dropped onto the ground, it might be after a rainy season, we've seen people struggle. Literally, when we do survival courses, we've seen them struggle for 3 hours just to get a fire started. And if you really need those 3 hours is a long time.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's that's one thing that I teach classes on is how to start a fire. and I'll take and let somebody dump a bucket of water on what I'm going to use for the fire, and I mean, true, it has to evaporate that water before
Right.
it can actually become a fuel. But I show them how to do it, and it's an old Boy Scout trick, and actually a friend of mine taught me. I didn't even know till he taught me. So it's good to learn from everybody.
That's right. Yeah, that's absolutely right. Now, when you came on our live show, Daniel, last Tuesday, afterwards, my wife and I got to looking for the pictures that we had of our dwarf Nigerian goats. And we found some, but we had taken pictures. I think I sent you one or two of the more cuter pictures, but we had found some that were, through their pregnancies. And one of their goats, I know this is a little bit off topic, but one of the goats had a real tough pregnancy. And my wife actually had to get in there and help the kid through. Have you had that sort of experience with animals before, or what do you think the importance is of being able to get in and get your hands dirty and take part in bringing new life onto Earth?
Oh yeah, that's 100%. And I've had to help chickens out of the eggs, have to help babies out of the goats. It's pretty disgusting, and I usually ended up throwing up. But but I'm not I'm not good on blood, so I know that's bad. But Chris is the one that cleans our deer when we kill a deer. Chris is the one that cleans it. I'll kill it, but I'll kill the animal, but she has to clean it and stuff. So
well, that's another thing that we noticed whenever we would have people come over for a course, that some of them had a real tough time, not so much with the blood, although some did, but they had a tough time morally taking that life to provide themselves food. And that's a real startling disconnect that we have in our society, where they'll eat meat, and we have meat eaters, but they don't know how that process happens, and they don't want any part of that. And that's something that homesteading or in a disaster, you kind of have to get over, because you have to provide your own food.
Oh yeah. Oh, you're right. Absolutely right. It's I mean, that's you can't be squeamish about it then, but I figured when it happens, I could, try to suck it up, but I don't know, it's just something about the smell. It's for me, so.
I'll tell you what, spilling the guts is it's something that takes the first couple of times, takes some real getting used to. But like you said, if you had to do it, you can do it. No doubt about it. Because if you look at survival stories around the world of people who get lost in the woods or anything, they didn't go into the woods thinking they would be eating grubs and ants and things to get out, but they ended up doing it before, because our bodies are just made to survive at the end of the day.
Luckily, I know all the manna out there in the woods. I mean, I would be eating like a king out there. I'd find me a nice lion's mane mushroom and eat on it for a few days, and start a fire with a bow, so
well, that's important too. I think it might have been after the show last night. We had Adapt 2030 on last night, and I know you were in there too. And we were talking about foraging and hunting. And I think it was after the show. And I think that we said, you can right now forage and there's no competition, but we have to consider the competition during an event, because everybody else will be looking for food too. And it brought back to memory something. My great aunt had passed away just a couple of years ago. I believe she was 98, and she was a young girl during the Great Depression. And so she had told us the stories of how they had turned their front yard into a garden. And someone had to watch the garden all the time, because people would come and loot from the neighborhood's garden. And her mother had a rule that if it was a young girl or a young woman, they would let her take a couple of things and tell her, please don't take any more, just take what you have to eat today. But if it was a man or something nefarious, they would call my aunt's father in to kind of handle the situation. And I think that during an event like an economic collapse, like the Great Depression, or something else, we have to think about that there's going to be competition really in everything that you do. And that's why community is so important, because growing food is perfect, but during a collapse, during an event, you have to protect that food from other people. because there are people in this world who would rather steal than put in the labor to do it themselves, you know.
Well, you see that today, even today, you know, they would rather take what you have and instead of, you know, just digging a hole and putting a seed in there. But that's okay. You know, a lot of people will change when something happens. You know, they get hungry for a couple of days, and I think things will change. I think, you know, it'll be a great sifting, you know, happening. You know, so the bad will turn really bad, and the good will turn and start being good. You know,
Yeah,
so.
right. Well, I think that that's something so important that we always discuss, and I know you do too, and that's just the raw importance of a community. And we have a community here on YouTube, and before the show, we were kind of talking that you hear from friends and from viewers all the time about, you know, where they would go during an event. And it doesn't have to be anything big, doesn't have to be anything crazy, where they would go during an evacuation from wildfires.
Yeah.
You know, during an earthquake, during a bad storm, tornadoes, floods, these things that are happening all the time with more and more frequency, where would they go? And so many of our friends, family, and community friends rely on each other. And so we have to take that into consideration too. I know you do, Daniel, and you have always advocated that you and your family grow enough that you can give to others in a time of need. And I think that's really important. I respect you guys for that.
Yeah, we can, right now, we're still developing, but right now we could feed about 25 people. It might not be what everybody wants. You know, it might, yeah, yeah, you're eating it. It might be soup every day. If it's soup every day, I could probably feed about 80 people a day. So, wow. You know, but it might not be the best. You know, it might just be soup, might not fill people up. But we love, we call it tribulation food, but we could eat soup every day, and you know, so
I'll tell you what, you know, from the changes that my wife and I have made and our family have made, we did a similar thing, and we sort of scaled back our entire food routine. Our, you know, in our Western culture, it's, you know, people are afraid to have the same meal twice in a week, or they don't want leftovers or something like that, which is really not an economical thing to do. So we sort of scaled that back, and we cook only with our raw food ingredients. So our, you know, our flour, our sugar, our bread flour, and our rice. And so we use those as the staples for all of our other meals. And I think, like you said, we're okay with eating the same thing 4 days in a row. You might not, you know, look forward to it, but as you get hungry in that day, you look more and more forward to it. So I think that's something that we as a community need to sort of consider, that you might be eating the same exact thing every day for 2 weeks because that's what you have. And just kind of getting over now, while we have the chance to, that's just what you have to do.
Oh yeah, and now I have done this. We have done this. We did for an entire year. We only ate what we produced just to see if we could do it. I mean, I wasn't going to let my family starve or anything like that, but sure. There were a lot of cucumber sandwiches for breakfast. I promise you that. But and you'd be like, "What's for breakfast?" "Oh, cucumber sandwich." Okay, you know, that's you just got to do. You got to do what you got to do.
Yeah, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that.
But yeah, a lot of soups, and we all were healthier than we ever have been. I mean, now that we're going back to the grocery store and getting staples again, you know, we weren't as healthy as we were. But if we had to, we could do it again. And
you know, I think that's an important thing that everyone should sort of consider, and that's to use their staples like that. You know, people, if you go to a small market grocery store, or even a Walmart, and you buy rice in less than a 20-pound bag, you're not being as economical as you should. If you buy flour in a 5-pound sack, you're definitely not as economical as you should be. You know, everyone should go to Walmart and they should buy their white 5-gallon buckets, which are HDPE2, which is the polyurethane, polypropylene that's food grade safe plastic. And they should buy their bulk foods and put them in there and just use that. And, there's nothing wrong with using your flour that's 2 months old, that's 6 months old. We have flour that's still good that we'll open up and use every single day.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the way we were too. I mean, we did have oats stored and flour stored in sugar. I mean, it's not like we did totally without, but that stuff will run out, and so you got to get ready for that too. Your staples will run out. I mean, you've got to be able to produce enough food, and that's something that our main goal is for all of Go for Green Living. Our main goal is to figure out exactly how much food it takes to sustain a family. And we've been working on it for 4 years now, and we're getting close. But we've done tomatoes and squash and cucumbers and I can't even think of all of them, peppers, and but we know how many plants it takes for our family of 3 to make it through for an entire year, and we're going to share that once we have more information. Like one year we grew 375 tomato plants, thinking that was what it would take, but it didn't take near that much. We ended up storing all we could, and they started going bad, so we ended up giving away 400 pounds of tomatoes every week for 3.5 months.
Wow. Yeah. And you also have to use what you have while you have it, like you said. Or if you can't store anymore, then you need to find innovative ways to use that vegetable type. Like I'm making cucumber bread, making frying it with a little bit of flour, just doing different things to sort of change it up a little bit, but still using what you have on hand.
Oh yeah. You're absolutely right. It's really important, and that's the reason we did the experiment of 1 year. Plus, we were promised a book deal for doing it, and that didn't work out. But
yeah. Well, it was a good learning scenario for yourself, anyways.
Oh yeah. So it's this about you. I mean, you are. If you don't mind me asking you a couple of questions.
Sure.
Now what started you in? I know the Texas Chainsaw Massacre started you in this, and but I mean, what with your family? What made you take a moment and pause and go, look, I got to do something? And I'm sure we're all interested to find that out. So,
well, I'll tell you what. Like you said, a movie really really sparked me thinking. But after that, it was the personal understanding that I wasn't prepared. And then I had a child on the way, and knowing that I wasn't prepared, and now I have the responsibility of not just me and my wife, but also a child on the way so many years ago, that I said, I have to go out and find ways to be prepared. And so, at the time I was on forums, just really soaking in as much information that I could. I had a couple of friends who had been active military veterans. My oldest brother, he'd never seen any action, but he was in the military. And then transitioning what I learned on paper into skills out in the wild. So, if you could learn all day the chemical mechanics of a fire, and you could learn 10 different ways to make fire, but until you get out and it's been raining for 3 days and you try to make a fire, those are 2 different ideas on 2 different planets altogether. So then we started working with transitioning the skills that I was learning on paper into the field, and just doing that with each different set, doing that with first aid, doing that with fire making, water purification, shelter building, and then just sort of adopting the Australian walkabout method. And that is to, grab your pack, have it ready, and just go out. And you might spend a night out, you might spend 3 days out, you're going to spend a long time. And knowing what you have in your pack can sustain you for those 24, 36, 72, however many hours, without the need to rely on going back inside the warm shelter or the cool shelter of 4 walls and a roof. So that's sort of what started that transition there. And then it became less of a concern of unpreparedness and more a drive to enjoy the outdoors. And so I started realizing that as I went camping and went on these walkabouts, I was not only enjoying the earth that God put here before us and the world around me, but I was also developing and furthering these skills that I had put to use for survival and preparedness. So it was really a great way to sort of walk into that and then realize that, you know, we're camping here and we're just having a great time, but we're also still sort of honing these skills.
Oh yeah. So now you commented on your show about the series I did about prepper versus homesteaders. Was it that kind of progression for you, prepping, then bushcraft, and then homesteading?
Yeah, so it was survival and preparedness first, and then homesteading, because you saw that, you know, it's sort of it sort of walks hand in hand, because as you look at the world and you say, I need to survive and I need to prepare for a disaster, then you look at cultures around the world, and including the homestead culture in the United States, and everyday life is that same preparation, just on a grander scale. So that, I think, is an important thing that goes hand in hand. And for so many years, the general outlook by the mainstream media has been to pocket survivalists as these sort of crazy kooks who are preparing for an apocalypse, and then pocket homesteaders under a different label of country folk. And neither of them have really been shed in a positive light, because both genres gain so much independence from the rest of the world. You know, the homesteaders, the survivalists, they don't need to go out to dinner every weekend. They don't need to go see the latest movie. You know, they don't need to really do all of those things. So as far as the rest of the modernized world goes, they're not very much used to them. And so they sort of push them in a negative light. But I work towards bringing that back out. And the homesteader and the survivalist, this was our grandparents. Every single day was homestead, and every single day was personal survival and preparedness. So, you know, the fact that the modern Western world shines such a negative light on it, I think we need to sort of rip that veil open and show that this is how humans have progressed for thousands of years, and it's how we should continue to progress.
All right, everybody's asking what this is, and actually this is Brad teaching me how to do the interview thing. So we just made it live, so, you know, and then we started talking. It was a real good conversation. I didn't want to end it, but I got one more question for you, Brad. Okay. And this might help everybody else. What made you decide to go from, you know, you're putting yourself on the open on YouTube. You're putting yourself out there. I mean, you're making yourself vulnerable, to put it bluntly. What made you decide to cross that line, to decide to be helper instead of, you know, just a watcher?
I'll tell you, that's a great question. So I taught myself back in the early, maybe late 90s, I taught myself the C+ programming language. Then I sort of gave up programming and picked it back up as I taught myself the Python programming language. And then I got into some white hat software development and software security encouragement, to say the least. And so if anyone that doesn't know what white hat hacking is, basically you're paid by a company to try to break through their firewalls, to knock all their doors down, electronically speaking, and, you know, take a file that they've hidden, which would mimic like credit card numbers or something like that. You do this so that they can better their security against people who are looking to do harm. And so as I got into that and sort of started to understand the different ins and outs of the technological world, I also started reading white papers based on government surveillance, and understood that the government knows everything about you and every single thing that you do. So the government of every country controls the choke points of their internet service providers. And so it's sort of like every bit of data that goes on through the internet has to go through the government's front door to get to where you're going. So as you type in www.google.com, it sends a request out to a server then it brings that request back. So somewhere between there, that information is being filtered and looked through by a government who's allowing the internet to continue there. And the documents on PRISM, when Edward Snowden broke the PRISM point wide open, sort of showed that massive surveillance regimens are happening around the world in every country. And even before that, I understood this to be going on and just made the decision that, well, my personal feelings aren't hidden from the government, so who am I hiding them from? Well, I guess I'm just hiding them from my peers then. And I would rather that my peers know that I'm a good person who's also concerned with, you know, critical events happening around the world, rather than hiding from my peers. And that's what sort of broke into the, you know, YouTube stream of letting everyone know, hey, it's okay. You know, I'm into preparedness. I'm into survival. You know, and this is just who I am. And now I just try to help other people sort of get there, because if you're not hiding from the government, you're only hiding from people who can help you.
Or you could help. Yeah.
That's right. Or you can help.
Yeah. So yeah, that was an excellent answer, man. And then you gave me chill bumps, because that's exactly what made me decide to do it. I mean, I'm putting myself out there, putting a big target on my face, not just for the government, but for people to come and like, well, I'm going to go for green. You don't know how many times I've been told that I'm coming to your place when something happens. I mean,
yeah.
Drew.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean, but you know, I tell everybody the same thing, that I treat all with the same level of potential violence. So if I don't know you and you're not invited, you're a stranger.
Yeah. Well, I might, and like I tell everybody when they tell me that, I'll feed you, but then I'm going to show you which way to go. You know, it's, and you know, there's only so much that, you know, we'll be able to, you know, to do it at that time. But
yeah, I know exactly what you mean. But you're right. You know, if you didn't have this channel, if I didn't have my channel, we wouldn't be able to give information to other people. So I would rather be a beacon of light in the darkness that surrounds us than to be just another person looking for that light. And so, you know, I think it's so important that we use our channels and use that information to disseminate the truth and to show that good, smart, educated, intelligent people are concerned with the future, and we're doing something to prepare for it.
Yeah, just like the Homestead Network, people are coming together now. Like-minded people are coming together, and we're hoping that, you know, there's some land around here. We're hoping people buy that, and like-minded people move close to us, because you know, it's just, we can handle the food part of it, but we can't handle the security and all that. I mean, I'd have to stay awake all night long trying to protect, you know, what food we have. If we would be overrun, and like Krista said, we would end up being slaves to bigger groups around here, you know, raising their food.
Let me tell you something, you know, so as you know, Daniel, we're in between homesteads right now, and we moved from some acreage down in the middle of the state, and we were surrounded on all sides by cattle farms. And even in our current day, in the current stage of the economic collapse that we stand in, there were poachers and slaughterers that would drive their vans slowly down the street, and you're talking miles and miles of street, and then they would wait for a pocket of cattle to be near the fence. They would stop the van, and in less than 5 minutes, they would have shot the cow, jumped the fence, quartered it, put the quarters back in the van, and were on their way. No one would know the better. And this was happening on a weekly basis. So you're absolutely right that it's not just in the event of a disaster. It's in our current time that you have to consider being with like-minded people, so that if nothing else, you get a phone call that says, hey, Daniel, there's somebody with a van outside your house.
Yeah. And then a bunch of people come jumping out.
Right, exactly. And from afar, you know, I had actually watched one of these teams work, and it is startling how fast and how coordinated they worked. And they were out of the van, crossed the fence, quartered the animal, and put it back in, leaving the base of the carcass still there, just taking the quarters in literally 2 to 3 minutes. And so, you know, you're looking at something that they would do over and over again. Well, guess who's going to be doing that in the event of a larger crisis when the threat of law is not as extreme as it is today? That's going to be a lot of people doing that.
Yeah. Oh, I agree with you. And there's a lot of cows around here. That's a lot of cattle farms around here, but plus we have the big lake. So I imagine this will be quite the tourist attraction when something happens, if they can find it, that is. I mean, a lot of people can't find anything without their GPS. So.
Yeah, that's right. Well, and it's not just cattle either. You have to think of a garden, a well-maintained garden, or a greenhouse. A greenhouse is a beacon to anyone that can see it that says there's food inside. And yes. So you have to take everything. You have to sort of take on the mindset of the predator and say, if I'm a predator, how am I going to treat that? Well, I'm going to look for a greenhouse. And do I care that they can't, that fruit, those vegetables, those plants won't continue fruiting? I don't care, because I'm just there to get my food. So as a predator, I'm going to go and I'm just going to cut the stock of everything in there, load the truck, and leave. That not only hurts the producer, the farmer, now they're months behind being able to grow anything else. It's not just like they took that food away. No, now they have taken the entire plant, and now they're months behind. And you could have set into motion a large and dangerous scenario of events. So, you have to take into account that it's not just the cattle, it's every greenhouse, every garden, fruit trees. It's really anything that you can think of. And it's not just during a disaster, it's during the time that we live in, because we are in a stage of the collapse right now. They are pushing monetary stimulus. They're pushing digital money and fake money back into the US economy each and every month through different processes. Japan and China, they're actively pushing stimulus into their economies. This is happening all around the world. It's just a controlled stage of the collapse. So could it last 5 years? Yes. Could it last 10 years? Yes, at a much darker and more dingent level. Could it only last 6 months? It could be that too. So, you have to kind of consider that even though we're in a stage right now, what's the future going to be like?
Oh yeah, I agree with you there. I mean, and I tell everybody, everybody says, why are you doing this? Why are you practicing? I'm sorry, they don't say, why are you growing so much food, is what they say. And right. I always say, I'm just practicing. And like me and Anna was standing out there on the street this recent. We were giving away lettuce. We gave away 4,000 heads of lettuce. That's because right. I don't want it to go to waste, but me and Anna are out there, free lettuce, and people wouldn't take it. They're like, lettuce, like,
yeah, right.
And she was like, she kept asking me, Daddy, why aren't they taking this food? I mean, not that I think they thought it was poisonous. They just didn't know what to do with fresh food.
Yeah, well, right, and they don't even have that that thought in their head. Whereas if you tried to do that in Venezuela, you would be swamped by people who would come to get that lettuce.
Oh, it's all good for you lettuce too. Butter crunch and oak leaf and red oak leaf and deer tongue, all real good for you lettuce. I mean, we ate as much as we could, but there's no real way of storing lettuce. So, but it's if there was a bunch of people hungry here that we were feeding when something happened, then we would have a protection grid around us then, because people would want their bellies full every day, so then we would have protection here. But us by ourselves, we would just be overrun. There's from our own neighbors, we would be overrun because they know what we grow.
I think exactly. Your neighbors do become a potential threat during a disaster, because they'll watch you grow and speculatively, see what you're doing, but it won't be until something happens that they'll consider how they can benefit from that. But I was going to say that, it's not just a collapse. It's also, I don't think anyone that you ask could say that their monetary situation has been better these last 2 years than they were the last 5 years. And they won't say that the last 7 years were better than the last 10 years. Everyone is suffering to some degree, whether dealing with inflation at the store, more money for less product, personal economic disasters. It's not just for a collapse. What if things continue to get worse? And we're already seeing where children aren't leaving the nest. They're not leaving the homes. They're staying with the family, which to me, I think is a good thing anyways, but it's a a point that is evident of our current economic situation that there's no money to. So what if that takes another step further, and not just children are staying home, but now the rest of the family is deciding to all group in one place? Then you're going to have to consider how you're going to feed everybody, and that's something that you've got to take into thought.
Yeah, that's no, you're right about that, and I like the fact that, I mean, it's the way it used to be. The son stayed at home, the girl stayed at home, until they were married. Then they would leave
Right.
and all that. So I think it's coming back to that. I know we're reverting back to the like before the recession.
Yeah.
So
Right.
which is a good thing, and more homesteads are popping up. More people are awake. More people are aware. I agree with you. How long it's going to last, nobody knows. But I think it'll last until they've thinned out the population. Then they'll start it back up again. So,
well, I'll tell you what. From we run some trending algorithms here, and from everything that I'm seeing, if you look back at history, when the economy collapses, every country goes to war. There is no other choice but to try and physically take the goods of other people when you lose power. It's sort of a last-ditch effort of every empire, of every economy, of every country of the world, of every government. So you're either like Zimbabwe, which is very small and you don't have much military might, or you're like China, Russia, and the United States, Iran, and India, and Pakistan, where you have a lot of military might and you have nuclear power, nuclear warheads. So what are those countries with nuclear power going to do when their economies collapse and they have no choice but to go try to physically take the land from other people? And that's, I think, when we'll see sort of a big hiccup in the whole world that sits around us.
oh yeah, you're right. I mean, you're right. It's I don't know. I don't know what's coming for us, but everybody knows something is. I mean, the people that watch any kind of other news than our normal news. That guy last night on your show, I mean, it really. I mean, I've already been a prepper, a homesteader, a bushcrafter, but that guy last night, he made me want to. It was what was his name again?
David with Adapt 2030.
Adapt 2030. He made me want to do more. It wasn't that he got me scared or anything like that. It just, it got me thinking, am I doing enough? Am I,
right.
I mean, and like watching your channel, watching your news broadcasts and all the bird flu that's going on in all the other countries. Are we so arrogant to think that it's not going to come over here? I mean,
that's so startling too. How is the rest of mainstream media not discussing that there have already been up to 10 million birds professionally culled by governments around the world due to a bird flu, the H5N8 variation of the avian influenza virus, which is spreading rampantly through Europe? So imagine you're a poultry farmer. Yesterday, everything was fine. You go out and look at your chickens today, whether it's a flock of 20 or a flock of 20,000, and you have a 60% loss because they are all dead on the ground. Yesterday, they were fine. Today, they're all dead. Well, what are you going to do? You're going to clean them up. If you're not using biological, containment standards, you're going to risk the possibility of infecting yourself. And so you've got this huge potential for a cross-species jump between the virus that will then mutate and cross with a common flu and become more virulent and spread to people more easily. That's sort of the doomsday scenario among the governments of the world. And the virologists and disease researchers are saying it's just a matter of when it's going to happen. So like you said, if you're not watching those types of things, if you're only watching the BBC or even RT or Fox or CNN or local news, you're not going to understand that up to 10 million birds, as of right now, have been killed because of their potential to spread the bird flu.
Yeah, that's I mean, you're right, and that's what if I know we don't have many people watching this, but if you're not subscribed, you need to go every morning. Start your morning with full spectrum survival, because he lays it out for you in uh okay.
Well, this was great. So Daniel, I think that this was kind of impromptu, like you said. We didn't really have anything to discuss. We just jumped on to try to get the live stream working.
Yeah.
And so maybe we'll kind of make a deal of it, and maybe every once in a while we could get on and just sort of discuss what's going on in the world.
Yeah, that would be awesome. I'd really appreciate that. And I appreciate it because you taught me how to do this now, and it's like, uh-oh, you opened up a can of worms now.
But it's only better. And like you said before the show, it's more important, it's most important that we all come together and just see what we can do to sort of help each other out. There might be something that you need that I have. There might be something that Big Bear or Wee Tree or Lonely Prepper or anyone out there needs that I have or that you have, and that we can all sort of work together to try and make things work, even in the current day of where we stand right now.
Yeah, I agree with you there. It's it's part of community, and I've been pushing it ever since day one in my YouTube channel. Let's get together, let's help each other, let's scratch each other's back. I mean, maybe not go that far, but hold the board when somebody needs to hold the board. I mean, that's and like Wheatree just said, and barter. Set up barters now. We're already bartering with local farmers that live close to us. So they're Mennonites, and they like to barter. They're not really into the money as much as as other people are. So I trade vegetables for them for products they have. So, but yeah, I have kept you a long time this time, and I know you're a busy man. I know you got to go out and do your research and all that. I know with your channel, exciting channel as yours, you need to do something like that. I mean, you got a lot to do.
We do actually. Today was a bit of a leisure day, and like I said, we're in between homesteads, so we can't really just go start a fire outside. So I'm taking the kids and the wife to we're doing homeschool in the woods today, and we're going out to a site and sort of spending the day out there.
Are you filming it?
No, we might do something out there, but mostly it's just a family day.
Well, that's the best kind, right?
That's right.
I mean, I know, but that your wife might not want to be part of it, but hey, everybody loves our family get together. But I'll let you go, and thank you so much for doing this for me. And yeah, anytime you want to get together and chat, I'd love to do that, because I love to pick your brain, because you know so much, and we all benefit from that. So
well, I appreciate you having me here, and thanks for everybody in the chat room for being there with us, and seeing that this was just getting started with live stream. It's sort of off topic for everyone else, but Daniel, you'll have to go back to the original page where you clicked start broadcast, and now you'll have to move the mouse around and click stop broadcast for it to stop in here, or hit the little red hang up button.
Oh, but I want to leave call, but but I am gonna stop the broadcast. So everybody, y'all have a good day, and we'll see you tonight on our live stream, 9 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. All right, later, guys.